Welcome to another episode of Shift with Elena Agar. In this conversation, I sit down with Nana Twumasi. She's an accomplished publisher with a rich background in both editing and building imprints within the book industry. She shares some reality checks around what it's like to be in the publishing industry and some really tips and timelines and strategies when it comes to actually publishing a book. And in a world where it seems like everybody wants to write a book, and I see a lot of people in talent development and kind of HR space and leadership space wanting to put out books, I thought this was an interesting episode. I've written a book myself, and I went through that whole process, and it was very time consuming, very draining, and just it's much harder than people can imagine. And I just wanted to have a chat with her to give us some tips. She talked about her career story as well and kind of what's next for her. As always, I want to make sure to get those career stories out there. And really just like what it looks like when you want to publish a book, what do publishers look for in an author and content and so on, and how do you get to the bestseller lists? So anyway, if you're interested in publishing or kind of learning more about that or that career path, this conversation is for you. As always, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Nana, welcome to the Shift podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we have lots of things we're going to cover, from you building this publishing business to working with different authors and people out there. Before we dive into some of those things, because I think it's becoming a lot more important, especially and I've seen this a lot in the world of business and the world of personal branding and just educating our audiences and so on. And with the AI coming on, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts around that world. But tell me a little bit more about how you got into this and like what's your career story?
Sure. So I got into this I would say in an interesting way. I went to college and got my English degree, and I majored in writing. And I think I thought I was, going to be a writer and do like the next great American novel. But surprise, you have to make money and pay the rent. Pay the rent. So at the time, my family was living in Minnesota, and I happened to get a job with a children's book publisher. And also at the time, I was doing a lot of photography, and so the job was as a photo researcher. And what that meant was the editors there, it was a lot of children's books. It was a lot of like, biography of Abraham Lincoln and, trucks or something like that. So we would have to source the imagery for those books. And sometimes that meant doing photo shoots, and sometimes it meant working with photographers. And sometimes it was a lot of like historical archive research and things like that. So that was technically my first publishing job. Which I did that for a few years, and then decided I wanted to go to grad school. So I did. I moved to California to do that because, again, I still wanted to write the great American novel. And after grad school, it was again like, okay, well, I guess I have to pay the rent, and I didn't particularly want to leave California. I was just enjoying my time there, and was fortunate to get a job as an editorial assistant at Jossey-Bass, which was an imprint of John Wiley and Sons. And I believe Jossey-Bass is no more, or they might still use like the logo, but there's not like a separate entity as there used to be when I started working. It was like 2007. And that job, I think, is what really opened my eyes to the publishing process. I was assisting two very established editors. One of them was doing K-12 education books, and the other one was doing a lot of what I do now, which is relationships, personal growth, inspiration. And he also did some other like more narrative nonfiction things. But I did that for really a number of years, and I learned a lot about the industry, and then just kind of decided at that point, like, oh, I guess this is the career path that I'm on. So the thing with publishing is that if you get into it around that age, like in your early 20s, if you talk to almost any editor, they will tell you that they had like a break and they just were like, I don't want to do this anymore. I hate publishing. So I had my little like breakup year with publishing, and I left Jossey-Bass and did other jobs.
Yeah. Why? Can I pause you here? Like, why? Yeah. What is it about publishing that's I don't know? So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do without wanting to say too many terrible things. No, but I do love publishing. At the time, it's really slow. It's a slow business. If you imagine, writing a book is slow, printing a book is slow, shipping a book is slow, making any changes and innovations can be slow, especially since trends move so fast. And, in the last 20 years, we've seen the way that people share information, things people are interested in, like it changes so fast. And it's publishing wasn't that business. I think it's better now, but at the time you just get like, it's just, you feel like so stuck and you feel like, oh, there's so many other things we could be doing. We're just not doing it. There's not resources. The people in charge are, skeptical of that stuff. And so, you just kind of like, and none of my books are hitting the New York Times bestseller list or whatever it is. So you just are, I did anyway. Most of the people that I know that I've talked to had this experience.
Yeah. So you left. So then you took a year break. You worked other jobs, and then
and it wasn't intended to be a year break. I was just like, I'm not working in publishing. Like I'm done. I'm gonna go do something else, use more of my writing skills, whatever. But then I don't know if I can remember this properly, but anyway, I ended up working at Callisto Media, and Callisto Media was a tech company that published books. They weren't necessarily a publishing house, but they were basically trying to innovate or disrupt. I know everyone, that was the buzzword.
It's a big word these days.
The industry by really leaning on data, getting faster access to trends, publishing on a much faster schedule, and doing it like on a shoestring budget, basically. And as you can imagine, if you worked in the industry and like all of the complaints that I just listed to you, someone is like offering you can get a book out in 3 months. It's going to be exactly what people are looking for. That seems really exciting as someone who's been in the industry for a long time. So I was brought on to build out their like personal growth and self-help kind of angle. Prior to that, they were doing kind of other topics, exploring different things, and they wanted an editor who had experience doing the practical nonfiction piece. So I did that for a long time, 6 years, 7 years, something like that. Which then led me to here. So I don't know if you want me to.
Yeah, please. I want you to dive into
the whole circle.
I want to hear the full circle. Yeah. Like what's your day look like now?
Oh, my day. It's so much email. One of the things that I think it's easy to lose sight of if you are an editor or you work in the industry, is that we are it's a business. I think, and this is just my opinion, you go from being an editor who's just like individual contributor, you work on your projects, you work on your authors, you manage your books, you can understand how that contributes to the business, but you don't necessarily see like the whole thing. One of the things they say about the publishing industry is that it is a lot of math, but is done by English majors. So,
talk to me a little bit about that, because I've done self-publishing route, but I've never worked with I've had friends, and I know it's very complicated. Like it's not as I don't think people understand the back end of publishing. So I would love for you to break that down to me, because I think numbers are important as well. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think like I said, it's a business, and every business you have to look at profit and loss. You have to look at opportunity. You have to look at how many copies a product or a thing that you're getting out the door. You have to look at how many people are buying it, and all you're doing in publishing is estimating all of that up front, in the hopes and with the plan that when you put it out, it's going to meet or exceed your expectations. And if you're someone in my position, like a publisher who's running an imprint, you're doing that multiple times over, and I'm essentially responsible for a small business. I run a small business that's inside a bigger business. And to me, that's been really an amazing opportunity and really eye-opening about how publishing works, even more so. And, it really comes down to can we get people to buy these books? Can we get the numbers of people that we think are going to buy this book to buy the book? A lot of what keeps this industry running is that, and this is what something like Callisto was trying to change or avoid, maybe, I don't know, they'd probably say change, was the industry is kind of like held up by books that do really, really, really well, exceedingly well. You know, you know what these books are: Atomic Habits, Green Lights, The Body Keeps the Score, currently Let Them Theory, right? Just Malcolm Gladwell's books. You know, they do really, really, really well. They stay on the bestseller list forever. People are buying thousands of copies a week, whatever. And then, you know, there's also plenty of fiction and, you know, other children's books, whatever, things like that, things that just do really, really, really well, and bring in a lot of revenue, and that essentially supports the rest of the business. You know, most books will only sell a few thousand copies,
if that, probably,
or if that, over the course of their life. And so you're gauging, like, well, how much in advance am I going to pay this person to make what I think that the book is going to sell, like, bear it? How am I going to get that to bear out? You know, so you really want to make use of the resources that you have with the books on your list that are doing really, really well, and trying to make choices about the other ones that maybe you know are not going to sell as much, but you still want them to be successful. And the idea of success is also a little bit different. You know, if I offer someone a certain amount that's 5 figures, I don't want to say actual numbers, but you know, like 5 figures, and I estimate, okay, with that amount, the book is going to sell 10,000 copies. Great. And it comes out and it sells 15,000 copies. Amazing. That's a success. I think people think of success as like that bestseller list, millions of copies sold, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
That's not necessarily it. You know, it's more like, you know, someone said to me recently, like, what is 6,000? 6,000 people is a lot of people. You know,
a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. If 6,000 people have bought and read a book, that's a lot of people. You know, that's a theater show. It's like, it's a lot of people. So that's not necessarily a failure.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think we just live in this, like, I mean, I think in the world of social media, it's not a lot of people, right? Like, so I think that's kind of where we get these numbers from. But I'm like, imagine you're speaking in front of 6,000 people. That's a huge amount of people. So I think, so I agree. I think we just, I think it's just like, you know, misconstrued with like other numbers, and you're like, and you can't look at it that way.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I'm curious your opinion. All right. So when a lot of people in my world, so I'm in talent development, leadership, and there's a lot of leadership books out there, self-help books. You know, I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who've written books. I myself written a book with my business partner in the past. We only did it, honestly, as a marketing tool. Like, we weren't thinking about making money off of it. You use it as a marketing tool. And then, you know, and the first question I have for you, so I spoke with a PR person a while back, and she blew my mind.
Okay.
And she blew my mind around how, like, when you talk about bestseller, when you talk about those books that stay up there, how much of it is marketing versus the book is actually good? I'm curious. Do you know what I mean? She blew my mind of like, well, listen, if you get this $40,000 package, you're going to guarantee a spot at this show, and you're going to get on this big podcast, and you're going to da-da-da-da, and I'm going to put a billboard in New York Times Square for you.
Yeah.
With your book. So how much it is the quality versus the marketing game?
Sure. Very fair question. Something that, you know, we think of a lot. The answer in my mind is, if the book is not good, if it's literally unreadable, terrible, it cannot maintain those numbers, right? There's at least something about the book that is enjoyable, that people are learning something from it, even if it's not what you or I might call like a Pulitzer Prize winner, or even though it's, you know, it might not be like the most beautiful thing, but people are reading it and they're taking something from it. You know, it's hard to quantify what good is unless you know what really, really bad is.
Yeah.
And really, really bad is unreadable, repetitive, like, you know, uh, bad takes, that's like literally unreadable. And then there's things that I think are like, this is entertaining, this is helping me, this is interesting. It might not be the most revolutionary thing in the world, but
Mm.
so that's part of it. And the other part is that, things build their own steam. If you see a certain book that's like on a bestseller list for 10 weeks and
Hmm.
you're interested in that kind of thing, you're going to be curious to find out what it is. What is the hullabaloo? What is the thing? Why do I have to watch this show? Why should I see this movie? Everyone's talking about it. I keep
Yeah.
seeing it. So I
Yeah.
might,
Fair point. Yeah,
yeah.
so it definitely, I mean, I totally agree. Yes, I guess maybe if you see books like really like spike up and then die down, maybe that's where it's the marketing did a good job in the beginning and then it died down because they
Yeah,
just, yeah.
most likely, most likely. I mean, there are plenty of books that hit the well, if we're using the bestseller list as a benchmark. First of all, I don't think anyone should chase any bestseller list, if you ask me. Um, I think it's skewed our idea of what we think of as successful and what we think of as good. There are hundreds of thousands of books published that are amazing, beautiful,
Hmm.
great. You will never hear of them. They will never get on a list.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they will sell a lot of copies. A lot of the books that I worked on in my previous roles have sold thousands of copies and will never be on a bestseller list because the metrics that they use um, uh, don't they don't match. I can't think of the right
Yeah.
language. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? They don't use like the same metrics.
Right.
So I lost my train of thought. But I just I feel like to change your idea of what success is, and
Hmm.
also I don't know. I lost my train of thought because I started talking
Yeah,
something
that's
else.
okay. That's
You
okay.
might
I
want to
think
reset me.
that's okay.
Yeah.
um that's what makes this conversation interesting and real, right? This is
Yeah.
we're not scripting this, and that's what I love
Yeah.
about my podcast is this is not scripted. We don't, you know what I mean? That I want to hear the real things.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you know, like as a publisher, when you're looking, because you're in this personal growth kind of self-help,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of books. I honestly, I mean, I feel so blessed to have been able to access some of the greatest books, like the ones that you've mentioned with Atomic Habits and Green Lights, and
Mhm.
and a lot of different books. Obviously, I mean, I have a whole bookcase. Like
Yep.
I'm a huge reader.
Yeah.
But how do you determine if a book is gonna hit? Like as a publisher, when
Mhm.
you're working with an author, like
Mhm.
what are some things that people as writers, somebody's listening to, like, okay, I'm in the space of leadership development or professional personal growth, like i
Mhm.
want to i want to write a book, and the idea might seem great, but what does a publisher look at? Like what is other metrics that they look for? Are there specific things they look for that are going to make it a great book?
Sure. Um, so a lot of it is experience. A lot of it is just having done a lot of books over many number of years and kind of seeing the things that make a book work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, what we I want to qualify and say that I do not practical nonfiction, which is different than narrative nonfiction itself, which is different than fiction and any other genres. So we're looking at different indicators than someone who's publishing fiction and is like reviewing novels and short story collections and what.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes you get someone who is not super visible. This is how it used to be. If you think about books like Secret or A Course in Miracles and things like that, of people who were maybe not super visible. Obviously, the mechanisms for visibility these days are very different than they were 20 years ago when you had to get on TV or somebody had to, like, it was like word of mouth. Someone had to recommend something to you.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes we'll get a book that by someone who's not super visible and it just hits, it takes off, whether it's the topic or the writing or something like that. Most of the time, what we're looking for is, um, can this person support future sales of the book? So I'll explain what I mean. What I mean is, when we look at nonfiction books, we're often not getting like a full, completely written book. Like if you're looking at a novel, usually you're getting like a mostly written novel that's coming to you that you're considering. For nonfiction, people are pitching us ideas and we're saying, okay, we're going to support you to write this book. So there is a fair amount of trust involved going into it. Um, so usually when people come to us, it's because I have done research on this topic for many, many years. I have worked in this topic for many, many years. I, run a coaching business where I help people change their diet. And I want to put all that into a book. So what I'm looking for is, are you planning on sustaining that,
Mm-hmm.
after the book comes out so that you will continue to be visible, so that you will continue to be able to support sales of your book? And that doesn't mean that I won't do anything or that my team doesn't do anything to support it. Of course we will, but I'm looking for people who are growing,
Yeah.
basically. Um, and that the time of doing a book and having that be the thing that makes you or that you're known for in this particular space is kind of over. Most people are coming to us because, like I've said, they have built a business, they built some kind of something. Sometimes it's just, I have a social media platform and I want to, put everything that I've learned together. Some people, like I've said, have been like doing research or running businesses, or they're doctors. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of doctors and people who have credentials who want to put a book together.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's that, but I like to think that whatever book that you do with us, it becomes part of your portfolio. It's a thing that you use to further build your business and your profile,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, and I see this work quite well. I mean, like I said, like when we wrote a book, it's a great marketing tool that we then take to our clients,
You can
and
say,
usually it's like you're right, like in my world of talent development, leadership development kind of stuff, it's a lot of, here's some tips and great strategies that you can use in your
yep,
day, and like it's useful, right? But it is also a great entry point to conversations, to
yep,
interviews, podcasts, and
yep.
so on. And so yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. And it also
Yeah.
is I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's also is
No.
like, we get people who are, are they charge $1,500 to work with them. Maybe you don't have $1,500. Maybe you like their work. Maybe you can do $30 for a book. You know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
becomes,
Yeah.
again, a
Yeah,
way
that's
to
true.
like proliferate your message, get your message out there for,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because if you really want to make a difference, then like you're usually, I mean, like you said, like usually like I don't know many people that are just their bread and butter is being an author. It's very few in this world, right? Like it's very few. So you're not making necessarily money off your book, but at the same time, it's available and accessible to people who might not be able to afford your services, but you still can,
yep,
share that knowledge
yep,
with others.
exactly.
Um, Also, I'm curious. So you've mentioned like, so how do you actually support,
Mhm,
like how do you actually support a writer through? So I have an idea,
mhm,
I have the audience, I have the following, I'm growing the business and so on. What
mhm.
does that look like, and what are the timelines? Because I've seen some crazy timelines. Like they say like it's 18 months to publish a book. I'm like, by the time I publish my book, it's gonna be out of season. Like I don't like I'm gonna have to rewrite the whole thing. Like I need it now, like in 2 months. Like talk to me a little bit about
Yeah.
what's for the
Oh
author
gosh. I mean,
realistic.
yeah, as I said in the beginning, publishing is it's a very slow business. There have been efforts made to try to speed it up a little
Uh-huh.
bit, but then you also run into things like, um, you want to produce a quality thing, and getting someone to write a whole book in like 3 weeks or whatever is, you know, um, can be a challenge.
Right.
Um, About the process, a lot of the authors that my imprint supports are first-time authors. Um, as you can imagine, they come in with not a lot of foreknowledge about how publishing works. They might have an agent. They usually have an agent and someone who's kind of like coach them through what to expect. But you know, I always tell people that I can tell you what is going to happen over the
Mm-hmm.
next year, but it's you believe me, like you are not going to be prepared for it. It's a funny business.
Mm-hmm.
So as I mentioned, we're working with people who are giving us like proposals and not necessarily like fully fleshed out books. So the first step is they have to write their book. Um, and to your point, we try to be a little bit faster to market in industry terms than different genres. So we're giving people between 9 and 12 months to actually write, and that time actually goes by pretty quickly.
It sure
Um,
does.
yeah, and then we ask for about 9 months to actually produce the book, and so that's copy editing, proofreading, putting it in this layout. A lot of that time is printing and shipping. That takes up a lot of that time. So yeah, you're looking at about 18 to 24 months. And then of course we also want to plan seasonally, so
Yeah.
people probably aren't going to buy books about a new diet like in the middle of summer, so we try to
That's a good
plan.
point.
Yeah, we try to plan that to come out when people we think are like actually thinking about
New
it.
Year's resolutions.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Things
January,
like
February.
yeah, for the last month of December, I've just been like
Yeah.
Park City. I need to clean up my act,
Mm-hmm.
or, publishing a book about parenting or motherhood around that time of year when people are thinking about it, right? So we look at that. And then we also look at, maybe the author is doing a huge talk in November and they want to have the book available for that. So we think about
Yeah.
that. Um,
Okay.
so usually it's just 9 to 12 months of writing, and not much else is going on besides the 9 to 12 months of writing. Um, or like developing the cover and like finalizing the package, the title, subtitle, etc., all that
Yeah.
stuff. And then about 6 months ahead of publication is when we start doing the marketing publicity work. We have a whole team of people who will work with the author to support that. And yeah, hopefully the year following, you get a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. I mean, I know a lot of people have written books. I've interviewed a bunch of authors, like all the people here are like
Mhm.
authors that I've interviewed. And it's it's an interesting process, and I don't think people understand how difficult it is and how much thought goes into even the cover of it, like the color you should use, how it's going to land, the font, the title. I mean, God help me with the title of like how much thought goes into
A
what
lot.
sells,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. A
And you can
lot.
spend like weeks and months just
Months.
arguing about what's the
Yeah.
right title.
Yeah,
It's
and
wild.
we absolutely have we've absolutely have done that. As along the process, you're getting a lot of input from other people. So,
Yeah.
we got our sales team involved because they're going to be the ones that are actually selling the book to booksellers, and they'll say like, well, last year there was a book that had a similar title, or that particular word, people won't enjoy that particular word if or this cover doesn't make the book seem like what you want it to look like. You're designing a cover, you're thinking like, who is this for? What I want it to convey,
Yeah.
is it a medical topic? Is it women's health? Is it a inspirational book? Like, what am I trying to communicate? Who do I imagine picking this book up? And you're also working with the author about what they like, what they dislike, what they don't want to see. Someone might like really hate the color orange. They don't ever want to see it on their cover,
Yeah.
all kinds of like, yeah,
What what
negotiations
what
are happening.
what about ghostwriters? Because I feel like that's cheating a little bit.
Why?
I like when I hear people like use it and like, but that's I don't know. In my head, I'm like that's cheating. Like I get it. Like
Okay.
you
Yeah.
share like like it's your story, it's
Mhm.
your knowledge.
Mhm.
Talk to me about that. What are your thoughts?
Okay. Let me frame it for you this way. Let's say that you've spent your entire life or your entire career as an OBGYN, and you've
Mm-hmm.
developed this new approach that you've worked with your patients, and you've been doing that for 10 years, and maybe you have created some material for it or something like that. But when it comes to putting all that into a book, you are an OBGYN. You are not a writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Writing is a skill, and it is not a skill that everybody has, especially when you're creating a book length form that even though what I do is not necessarily like narrative, there is like narrative element to it, right? It has to be interesting. It has to make sense. It has the order has to flow in a certain way. And
Right.
you work with a lot of people who are very intelligent, very knowledgeable about what they do, but they're not the strongest writers, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. It doesn't mean that they don't have anything important to share. So working with a ghostwriter or a collaborator or a developmental editor helps them to bring their book to life, because the work of an editor, at least in a publishing house, is like, you're helping people shape their books and shape the material and whatnot, but it's hard if someone just gives you like a first draft that's basically notes. Having them construct it into a narrative is challenging if they don't know what that means. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a skill. It's a skill that not everybody possesses, and that's fine.
Right.
I don't want to, I'm not going to go to a doctor's office and be like, well, I looked on Google and it said this, so I'm going to diagnose you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah. I when you put it in that context, yeah. Okay, I get it. I guess I'm more thinking of people who, so like, yeah, like if it's some specialty or like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sold. I
But if you're
understand.
thinking of like, a celebrity who wants, does like a memoir or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
the thing
Fair
is, though,
perspective.
it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same. They might have an amazing story, but maybe not the strongest writers. And so you want someone to help them bring those thematic qualities out, like the actual narrative qualities out. So, yeah.
Okay. Yep. All right. You changed my mind a little bit on that one. Okay. With certain audiences. All right. I read a crazy statistic the other day, which I forget now, but basically it was saying how the young, like, kids in elementary school and like middle school, by the time they graduate, like they're going to forget how to actually write. I'm not talking like write as like write, like the idea of writing, but actually like put together stories, like articulate a story, a message, because of AI and ChatGPT and all these different technologies. And now you can, I mean, even personally, I'm getting lazy actually typing. I do the voiceover,
Wow.
the notes, and it just types it up for me.
Yeah.
Because the best of my thoughts come to me when I'm walking. And so I'm like, blah, 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 like,
so,
but what are your thoughts on just how like AI is impacting it? Do you think,
boy.
Because it's crazy, like it's crazy. And I'm like, how much that are people putting out there's AI that they just trained really well and it doesn't sound like AI, like although there's detecting software for it now. But what do you see?
It's obviously something that we're talking about a lot in the industry, primarily because people's work is being used to train AI without any compensation or like permission on anyone's part. There's definitely some legal action happening as to that. So that's something that we do deal with, and trying to work to better identify when or if AI is used in the construction of something. Our policy is that if an author does it, or if they're planned, it needs to be upfront. It needs to be indicated, and it needs to be called out. Almost like now on social posts, you'll see like generated with AI. So at least you're getting like an indicator that that's happening. We haven't really had it come up in text as much as people will sometimes do like sample covers and use like AI, to generate, to give a, visual to what they're thinking. And that's also dangerous. You can imagine we work with artists and designers who put our visual covers together, and using AI, it's like the copyright is like a mess. The fonts that it creates don't actually exist. You know what I mean? So you have to like, someone would have to like hand letter that kind of stuff. But anyway, I digress. But that's just where it comes up the most, is more like in visual things more than the actual text. I worry as someone who makes a living doing books, that it is interest people are losing and that it's a skill that people are losing. And I really just try to remain hopeful that like our need to learn and our need to tell stories doesn't get kind of consumed by
Mm.
AI. I do know that in educational settings, people are returning to making students like actually write out the essay. I don't know if you had to do this. I had to do this in college where you write out the essay
Yeah.
during the exam in class as a
Yeah.
type, sending it in typed and there's other software that I know people have access to check whether something is um, generated by AI. Uh, it's a little. I mean, it's scary. It's scary to me a little bit. Not because I think it's a useful. I think it can be a useful tool in certain ways, but seeing it kind of like take over creativity is, yeah, a
Yeah.
little challenging.
What do you see as the future of publishing? Because you mentioned that people losing interest in terms of like reading, right? Like reading actual hard books, right?
Yeah,
Not myself. I still love, like, I love the
yeah,
feeling, I love the feeling of just like, especially used book. I don't know what it is with me in used books. Like, I love this feeling of just like,
yeah,
it's just, and then sometimes when you see people make notes, like people that have read it before, you're like, oh my
yeah.
God,
And they
this is
take
like the
notes.
sweetest thing. I'm
Yeah.
like, I wonder, and I feel like I'm just connected with this person. And like, well, I wonder what they thought about this page and what is that little thing like, it's a whole experience, I feel like, you know?
Um, Yeah. What is the future of publishing? I don't know. I can't necessarily answer that question. I have been around long enough such that a number of things have happened that suggest like, oh, this is going to end the industry. It was ebooks, and there was like, oh God, no one's going to want to buy printed books anymore with ebooks. That ended up not being the case. And then audio has taken off. If there's anything that might outpace actual print, it might be audio, but we still do see plenty of people buying physical books. Uh, we build our financial expectations around that,
Hmm.
people buying physical books. And if you live in an urban area and you're riding the train, I see a number of people carrying hardcovers around. This is something that I don't even do, which I find amazing. It's like a 400-page hardcover book, just
Yeah.
hanging around. People are still very attached to it. In other genres, people are attached to the physical thing because they're creating a beautiful package and it's unique and it's like, you know, only a limited number were produced, things like that.
Hmm.
They are very special to people. So maybe I'm Pollyanna, maybe I'm gonna listen to this in 5 years and be like, oh no, we shouldn't have said that. But I mean, I think publishing is just kind of chugging along.
Yeah.
I'm currently really encouraged by audio. Um, uh, it's not my preferred format, but it is a lot of people's preferred format, and I think it actually makes books more accessible to a lot of
Yeah.
people who maybe don't actually have time to sit down and read, but they're in their car or they're commuting or they're, walking their dog and,
Yeah.
yeah, they can take the content in that way.
Yeah. Well, I think what will help the world of publishing for people actually reading the book. I
Mhm.
think just across society, we forgot how to relax, and we
Yeah,
forgot how to multitask, like how to stop
yeah, yeah,
multitasking. Like just sit down and read a book.
yeah. Sit down and
Like
read.
this is, I mean, I'm my own worst critic because I literally have this conversation. Like now these days, like I try to make I'm a huge reader and I go through these seasons where I'm like all I do every day sometimes is just, not all I do but like I read a book every day for just like 20-30 minutes at least, right? Or before I sleep. Now
Yeah,
I'm at a point where I'm like, you know what, I have some travel coming up, I have a train ride coming up, I'm just going to
yeah,
read it on there. It's
yeah,
like because I'm
yeah,
so caught up and like I have so many other things to do, and I think we need to remember like it's a pleasure, it's a meditation,
yeah,
it's enjoyable. Like I think
yeah,
I don't even think it's that people prefer audio. I think it's like the root cause is that
yeah,
we pretend we don't have time when
yeah.
we
But
just
we
don't make time
to
to
make the
just
time. Yeah,
wussa and just read a book and enjoy it.
yeah. I
You know
think,
what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I think anyone who's of a certain age, and I very much remember this, where I would just burn an afternoon just entirely reading a book as a kid, and
Yeah.
it was like the most just fun thing to do. And I mean, I'm not ancient, I had TV, I had internet, I had all that
Yeah.
stuff, but sometimes it was just having the time to sit and read. And you're right, we do kind of fool ourselves into thinking that I don't have time. If I have the time to do that, I should be doing something else, is I think what the thought process is.
Yeah.
But really, it's if you have the time to do that, you should just sit and read a book,
That's what you're doing. Yeah.
fine. Yeah. And that
Yeah.
is an activity in and of itself. You're learning, you're, engaging yourself, you're building empathy, you're,
Yep.
all the benefits of reading. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's beautiful. I love that. Now, as we kind of wrap this up, I have a question for you on a personal level. Did you end up writing a novel? Do you still want to write it? Because now I want to read Nana's work. Like, I want to read your novel. It's been in my head since the beginning of this conversation. So do you have one? Or are you planning to write one?
I do not. I definitely have multiple ideas for them. I have written some short stories that were published a number of years ago, and things like that. But it's hard to split my energy and my attention. I'm very much right now. I help other people make their books, and there have been a number of people. I mean, Toni Morrison is a great example, where she was working as an editor during the day and writing her own novel at night. And I wish I had that kind of ability, but I don't. So maybe one day.
One day. Keep me posted. Keep me posted. I would like. Yeah, I just somebody who loves like yourself, someone who really loves writing and reading so much. Like you have to put something out there from you. It's only fair. One day
I'll get there.
It will happen. It will happen. Yeah. Awesome. Where can people find you? Get in touch with you if they're interested in working with your publishing house. Like what?
Absolutely. So my imprint is called Balance. We are inside the Grand Central Publishing Division, which is part of Hachette Book Group. You can go to gcp-balance.com and you can get a list of all our books, and you can meet my team. And if you have something that fits our list, feel free to send it in.
Awesome. Nana, thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure my audience did too. And so if anybody's thinking of writing a book, this was a really fruitful episode for that. Thank you.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much.